The auctioneer struck the rusty chest with the handle of his gavel and frowned when the hollow clang echoed through the crowded barn. "Who wants this welded-shut thing?" he called, and laughter rolled across the rows of folding chairs. A few people joked that it probably held nothing except spiders and regret. In the back, a young woman lifted her bidding card with a hand that trembled just enough to catch the afternoon light. $100, she said. The room grew quiet for a heartbeat before someone laughed again. No one bid against her. The chest was heavy enough that two workers dragged it across the cracked concrete floor, leaving orange streaks of rust behind. One of them shook his head. "I hope you enjoy scrap metal." She smiled anyway, signed the receipt, and ran her fingers over the rough weld circling the lid. The metal was cold despite the summer heat. It felt as though someone had wanted whatever rested inside to stay hidden forever. Her pickup truck coughed twice before starting. The passenger seat held a paper bag with a sandwich she had forgotten to eat and a stack of overdue bills folded so many times the edges had become soft. She drove home without turning on the radio. Silence had become easier than filling empty space with voices that disappeared as soon as the engine stopped. Some things weigh far more than iron. She lived in a tiny farmhouse at the edge of town, inherited from the grandfather who had taught her to repair broken fences instead of replacing them. The porch leaned slightly, paint peeled from the railing. She wrestled the chest onto the porch one painful inch at a time before collapsing onto the steps beside it. Across the road, an elderly neighbor watched from his mailbox. "You planning to open it today?" he asked. "If I can," he chuckled. "Call me if it explodes." She laughed for the first time in days. The old angle grinder in her workshop complained louder than the chest did. Sparks danced across the concrete as she carefully followed the line of the weld. Hours slipped away. Her arms ached. The air smelled of hot steel and dust. Finally, the last strip of metal cracked loose. She set the grinder aside, wiped sweat from her forehead, and lifted the lid with both hands. Inside sat another box. This one was cedar, polished smooth despite its age. A small brass plate on top carried 3 engraved words, "For the finder." Her breath caught. She lifted the lid more gently than before. Folded letters rested beside a leather journal, several faded photographs, and a velvet pouch heavy with old gold coins. Beneath everything lay a sealed envelope addressed simply, "To whoever opened this." She unfolded the letter carefully. "If you are reading this," it began, "then curiosity defeated fear, and I already like you." She smiled without realizing it. The handwriting belonged to a man named Walter Briggs, who explained that he had owned a small machine shop decades earlier. He had welded the chest shut after learning his relatives planned to fight over his belongings before he had even died. Instead of leaving them an easy inheritance, he hid what mattered behind work only someone patient would attempt. Money disappears, character stays. The coins were valuable, but Walter spent only a few lines describing them. Most of the letters spoke about kindness. He wrote about fixing tractors for families who could not pay, about lending tools without expecting them back, about believing that wealth meant sleeping without bitterness. Near the end, one sentence stood alone: "If these coins save your future, promise me you'll help build someone else's." The journal contained page after page of ordinary days. Repairs, conversations, mistakes, gratitude. Nothing dramatic. Somehow that made every word feel more precious. The photographs showed strangers smiling beside repaired trucks, children holding fishing poles, workers eating sandwiches around a wooden table. On the back of one photo, Walter had written, "No fortune ever tasted better than lunch shared with friends." She closed the journal and looked around her quiet workshop. Dust floated through shafts of evening sunlight. The silence no longer felt empty. During the next week, she visited an antique dealer who nearly dropped the gold coin he examined. The collection was authentic. After careful appraisals and a private sale, the coins brought enough money to erase every debt she carried and leave far more than she had ever imagined possible. She kept the journal. She kept the photographs. She kept the letter. Months passed without anyone in town understanding why the old farmhouse suddenly had a repaired roof, fresh paint, and flowers blooming beneath the porch. She never spoke about the coins. Instead, she quietly paid the overdue lunch accounts at the elementary school. She bought winter coats for children through anonymous donations. She repaired the community library's broken furnace before the first cold morning arrived. Nobody knew her name. That seemed exactly right. One rainy afternoon, the elderly neighbor walked across the road carrying 2 mugs of coffee. "So," he asked, looking toward the cleaned chest now sitting beneath the porch roof, "what was inside?" She glanced at the weathered iron box. A reminder of what? That someone I never met believed strangers were worth trusting. He nodded slowly, as though that answered everything. Years later, the estate company held another auction in the same old barn. Younger faces filled the chairs now. The auctioneer joked about another battered trunk nobody wanted. Laughter rippled through the crowd exactly as it had before. She smiled quietly from the back row. Somewhere, another person might be one brave decision away from changing their life. When the gavel struck rusted metal and everyone laughed again, she heard something completely different, because she remembered the sound a welded-shut chest made just before it opened, a heart that had almost forgotten how to hope.